Welcome to the Dr. John Char Holistic Health Show. Last show we talked about the amalgams and different types of metals and different precautions that a regular patient has to be concerned with in terms of biological materials to put in his mouth, or if you had the fillings in your mouth, then what would you do in terms of be able to do the right thing to take out the fillings and detox. So for this show, we're going to be concentrating on what type of diseases can be caused by dental amalgams and toxic dental materials. So with me again is Adrian. Welcome to the show again, Adrian.
Yeah, thank you, John.
And let's talk about different types of diseases that can come from these toxic metals, including fluoride too.
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised that today we are exposed to so many different kinds of chemical toxins, and mercury obviously being one of them. And even mercury goes back to as far back as the story about Alice in Wonderland and the Mad Hatter. Mm-hmm. You guys all remember that fairy tale about the Mad Hatter. The reason he was mad is because he had mercury
right.
on his hat. You know, that he was getting continuous exposure. And this is one of the things that mercury will do, is it will mess up your brains. Mm-hmm. And you can elaborate more on that, Char.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to show you some videos on how, with the experts, we could talk about the University of Calgary did some research on how it affects the neurons or the tubular portion of the nerves in the brain, and how even the vapors and the mercury can get into the brain and create damage there, causing some type of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis, autism too. And then we're going to show you another video basically on Boyd Haley. You can go to the internet, by the way, and to the YouTubes and search for Boyd Haley autism on with Boyd Haley. He has a 5-part series on that. And also the University of Calgary research findings on the nerve damage. So Adrian, what is your experience, basically what you've seen as a observer about people having just the different kinds of degenerative diseases?
Well, what I've seen is that a lot of times the different diseases are actually just different stages of damage caused by the same source. Mm-hmm. Whether the source may be mercury, maybe fluoride, maybe some excitotoxins like MSG or aspartame. Mm-hmm. All these different things could cause problems in the brains and cause damage, whether individually or collectively. And this is where, when people come out with a product and exposes it into your body and they say it's safe, they only test it individually if they do any testing at all.
And you know what's interesting is that we're not even safe from the foods we eat now, or the environment we breathe, or the air we breathe, and the chemicals we use to clean our house.
Well, yes, but one of the things I really look for on testing when they say safe, mm-hmm. is do they do what I call worst case testing. Like, mm-hmm. for example, vaccinations, which has mercury, or used to have for the pediatric types, called thimerosal. When they test for safety, did they test it based on the worst case? Like, if they come up with a new vaccination and they have only a certain amount of thimerosal mercury in it, and they say, oh, it's safe at that level, but when they give it to you in the doctor's office, they don't shake the bottle well, so you have some, heavy settling, and then you draw out with a syringe a big dose of maybe the thimerosal, and it may combine several other vaccinations together, 5 or 6 vaccinations, and then they give it to a child, and they haven't tested it at the worst case. And this is where I'm concerned that they need to, they shouldn't be worried about, liability and whatnot. What is the safe and best way to do it for a child so that we don't get kids that get hurt or sick?
Well, let's look at this video that from the University of Calgary. They did some work on the neurons. I mean, how the mercury or these different toxic materials can affect the brain. Okay, let's see it.
How mercury causes brain neuron degeneration. Mercury has long been known to be a potent neurotoxic substance, whether it is inhaled or consumed in the diet as a food contaminant. Over the past 15 years, medical research laboratories have established that dental amalgam tooth fillings are a major contributor to mercury body burden. In 1997, a team of research scientists demonstrated that mercury vapor inhalation by animals produced a molecular lesion in brain protein metabolism, which was similar to a lesion seen in 80% of Alzheimer's diseased brains. Recently completed experiments by scientists at the University of Calgary's Faculty of Medicine now reveal, with direct visual evidence from brain neuron tissue cultures, how mercury ions actually alter the cell membrane structure of developing neurons. To better understand mercury's effect on the brain, let us first illustrate what brain neurons look like and how they grow. In this animation, we see 3 brain neurons growing in a tissue culture, each with a central cell body and numerous neural processes. At the end of each neurite is a growth cone where structural proteins are assembled to form the cell membrane. 2 principal proteins involved in growth cone function are actin, which is responsible for the pulsating motion seen here, and tubulin, a major structural component of the neurite membrane. During normal cell growth, tubulin molecules link together end-to-end to form microtubules, which surround neurofibrils, another structural protein component of the neuronal axon. Shown here is the neurite of a live neuron isolated from snail brain tissue, displaying linear growth due to growth cone activity. It is important to note that growth cones in all animal species, ranging from snails to humans, have identical structural and behavioral characteristics, and use proteins of virtually identical composition. In this experiment, neurons also isolated from snail brain tissue were grown in culture for several days, after which very low concentrations of mercury were added to the culture medium for 20 minutes. Over the next 30 minutes, the neurite membrane underwent rapid degeneration, leaving behind the denuded neurofibrils seen here. In contrast, other heavy metals added at this same concentration, such as aluminum, lead, cadmium, and manganese, did not produce this effect. To understand how mercury causes this degeneration, let us return to our illustration. As mentioned before, tubulin proteins link together during normal cell growth to form the microtubules which support the neurite structure. When mercury ions are introduced into the culture medium, they infiltrate the cell and bind themselves to newly synthesized tubulin molecules. More specifically, the mercury ions attach themselves to the binding site reserved for guanosine triphosphate, or GTP, on the beta subunit of the affected tubulin molecules. Since bound GTP normally provides the energy which allows tubulin molecules to attach to one another, mercury ions bound to these sites prevent tubulin proteins from linking together. Consequently, the neurite's microtubules begin to disassemble into free tubulin molecules, leaving the neurite stripped of its supporting structure. Ultimately, both the developing neurite and its growth cone collapse, and some denuded neurofibrils form aggregates or tangles, as depicted here. Shown here is a neurite growth cone stained specifically for tubulin and actin, before and after mercury exposure. Note that the mercury has caused disintegration of tubulin microtubule structure. These new findings reveal important visual evidence as to how mercury causes neurodegeneration. More importantly, this study provides the first direct evidence that low-level mercury exposure is indeed a precipitating factor that can initiate this neurodegenerative process within the brain.
Okay, we're back, and let's talk about what happened there. What would be the effect of the electromagnetic current when you see that it's a chemical? What you saw, how it affected the nerve. Tell me about the electromagnetic current from the different types of metals.
Well, as you know, the amalgam filling will store electricity, as we mentioned from previous sessions. So now if you're getting the toxicity from just the chemical side, and then you got the electrical side, now what you have is, I guess, what they call a synergistic effect, you know, where now 1 + 1 is equal to 3 in terms of the negative impact onto the brain and the body. This is very, very deadly. Can't say it, you know, any simpler than that.
Yeah, so, you know, on the next video, we're going to see Dr. Boyd Haley, who is the chemist in Kentucky, how on his work on autism and Alzheimer's.
I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Boyd Haley back in 1998, I believe. I invested my own funds to travel to go to this conference on the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, and I was really impressed. There's a lot of good, intelligent people there. They're not afraid to stick by what they believe is good science, good conviction. And Dr. Boyd Haley, he was the chair of the chemistry department. He's just not just some, you know, associate professor or something like that. He really knows his things.
No, it's good. And so we're going to be able to show what he thought of, what his findings were on autism. Let's show the clip.
One thing, environmental, even though environmental is being looked at more, is there such thing as a human genetic code that is not affected by mercury when they're given enough? And
no, of course not. Mercury is toxic to every biological system that it's exposed to. And when I tell people, when you look at an autistic child that's been exposed to thimerosal, you're looking at someone that's, you know, really a biochemical train wreck. And you can go all the way through. We can talk about, you know, the depolymerization of tubulin, you know, the suppression of the immune system, decreased methylation of their DNA and RNA. These kids have a myriad of problems. There isn't one biochemical system that I know of that wouldn't be effectively inhibited by mercury at very low concentrations. So when you start looking at these kids and you say, well, this problem causes it, or this, you know, what problem don't they have? I mean, they have digestive problems, they have neurological problems, they have immune problems. Anywhere you look in an autistic child, you're going to find that the biochemistry is not normal. They don't have normal metal levels. They keep a lot of different heavy metals. They can't excrete them anymore. So there's just no explanation for this, to say that mercury should be in medicine or dentistry or exposed to the human being at all. We need to get all the mercury out. And to sit there and argue, well, this little bit of mercury isn't toxic, or please let us put in. I mean, I testified in front of the Connecticut committee in the Department on Environmental Protection yesterday. And the arguments there, you know, with people saying, look, mercury's coming out, we have mercury, we can't eat mercury in the fish. And so what they were saying, please come here and tell us that, you know, amalgams that we put in our mouth put mercury in our body, which we flush down the toilet sooner or later, and it gets into the sewage treatment plant, and it's going out and it's getting into the fish, and it's rendering those fish too toxic for us to eat. Is that right? You know, that's the question they were asking. Well, what about that mercury going into your body on the first route? I mean, that's a ridiculous situation. And then it gets more stupid when you're sitting there and you're testifying, no, here's an amalgam, this is a mercury vapor sniffer, you hold it in front of it, it shows the mercury coming off. That's not a question that you have to bring somebody in from the University of Kentucky to tell somebody in Connecticut. They know that. And so there's no doubt about the contamination of the environment by dental amalgams. And yet, the Connecticut Dental Association, and supported by the American Dental Association, got up after I spoke and made the argument that, in essence, if I can be sarcastic, was, but we're dentists and we really, really have the right to intoxicate people if we want to with mercury, because the legislature didn't have the intent of excluding amalgam fillings or domestic dentistry when they said we don't want materials put in Connecticut, manufactured in Connecticut, that increase our mercury exposure. But exclude us dentists, we have a right to make you toxic. I mean, it doesn't speak very highly of the bureaucracy that runs American dentistry. As a matter of fact, I think I would say what they're doing is absolutely criminal in my mind. Because if you look at who has autistic children, these people are doctors, lawyers, dentists, scientists, prime business people. The mercury doesn't have anything to do with bad genetics. When we evolved on the face of the earth, with our knuckles dragging the ground, we drank bad water and we ate bad food. So 2/3 of the metal protection that our body has against heavy metals is in our intestines. We're not supposed to breathe mercury vapors from dental amalgams. We didn't evolve breathing mercury vapor, and we didn't evolve having ethyl mercury injected into our arms and legs. And so this is not a genetic weakness. It's a susceptibility that can flow. I mean, if you're ill, if you're on antibiotics, you're going to be more susceptible to mercury toxicity. This is not bad genetics. I mean, these are very bright people. These are very capable and accomplished people.
The predispositions to mercury toxicity are other exposures combined. Is that?
That's a big part of it, but it's not a genetic mutation. It's not a genetic weakness. It is just genetics that are different. And it's like, for example, a good example are Eskimos. You give them a beer or alcohol, they can't detox that alcohol. Because they were raised in the north, they didn't drink corn or drinks made of corn or wheat or anything like that. So they didn't develop the genetics to take care of it. But I certainly wouldn't want to be compared with one of them in surviving in the North Pole, eating whale blubber and seals. So they're genetically different, but it's not a mutation, and it's not a disease of any sort. I mean, susceptibilities are just a fact of life. All of us have certain weaknesses, towards certain elements that we're eating. A person susceptible to mercury may not be nearly as susceptible to, say, some other toxin like a pesticide or something. So to say that this is the parents' fault is just angers me more than anything else. It's the fault of the people who sat there after a report came out from the Toronto Hospital in '77 showing that 10 kids of 13 died after having thimerosal topically applied to their infected umbilical cord, and they reported that. And then they took thimerosal, they took mercurochrome and merthiolate, the red stuff they used to plant on, they took it off the market because it was too toxic. And then some of these Einsteins on the CDC and the vaccine board decided it was then a good idea to leave that same thimerosal and inject it into a day-old baby at a level that would only be safe if the baby weighed 275 pounds. So you have to say, if there's a mutation, if there's a problem that is a weakness, it's in the IQ of the people who run the CDC.
Ability in kids.
Well, I don't think they did. The EPA standard is 1/10 of a microgram per kilogram body weight. But that was decided on children, adolescent children, not babies, not infants less than 6 months old, but adolescents that ate fish in the Seychelles and Faroe Island studies. Now, you're eating fish, you're eating mercury that's already been in a living organism, tied up with things that would render it biologically not toxic, such as selenium, or binding it with cysteine or glutathione, similar molecules in the fish. So most of it goes straight through your body and is not retained. That's the reason I say fish is not as toxic as mercury is not as toxic. And so that's how it was decided. And then you take it down through your intestines. 2/3 of the metallothionein, which binds and removes heavy metals, are located in your intestines because, like I said, we evolved eating bad food that was contaminated. And so they say, well, this level is safe. So even that 1/10 microgram was way too high, but then they take and they inject it and they bypass your major protection. And they say, well, it's 1/10 of a microgram per kilogram body weight. It was just faulty logic. It just absolutely faulty.
Would oral vaccines therefore present a safer method?
Yes. Anything you take orally, I mean, you have a real protection. I mean, you know, going from your mouth to it goes outside your body on the other end, you have a lot of protection to get rid of stuff that shouldn't be in the body. I mean, we have trouble getting drugs absorbed orally. I mean, that's how tight that system is. So it would have been, if you could do that, it would have been better. But it would have been better, you know, you can come up with a lot of delivery systems, but nothing could have been worse than injecting it directly in the body with a bolus amount of an organic material. It is not sound science to say ethyl mercury would behave like methyl mercury. That's not sound science. It's a good first assumption, but what you do is you do safety tests. And what we can say about the CDC and the vaccine board and the Institute of Medicine totally, you know, gave them free hand. They didn't do any safety testing of that vaccine, you know, on infant mice, infant monkeys, or anything. The experimental animal was the infant American baby.
Okay, you heard about how mercury can create autism, and also he talked a little bit on Alzheimer's, and that's what he's famous for. He's done a lot of research on Alzheimer's and autism with mercury, and he talked about post-traumatic syndrome, which a lot of the soldiers are, before they even going to Iraq or Afghanistan, they already have the potential of having post-traumatic stress disorders. And with the impact on the wall on their physical beings, with the explosions and everything, it kind of agitates the body, and you can get a full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder. But you know, mercury can also cause, this is the statistics, mercury can also cause damage to the brain in children. It can be linked to neurological problems as the gastrointestinal problems. And we talked about mercury connection to the Alzheimer's disease. They also said in 1970 that mercury was very unstable. Mercury fillings related highly to toxic elemental mercury. And you can read about it. You can go to the internet and look up amalgam mercury dental fillings toxicity. In fact, you can go to mercola.com and look at Dr. Linda Garcia's work on implants, where they can show you why titanium can cause cancer, and there's replacement zirconium that's been used in the European countries, are now slowly finding its way in America. You can go back to talk about Bob Marshall's work, and he said he has an article that has about 70 pages, Out with Toxic Dental Metals, In with Healthy Biocompatible Dental Materials. And it's a very good article on the different types of dental materials for your mouth. You can even go to my website. It's called holisticdentalcare.com. You can talk about the research on the fluoride.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in the future sessions, we will be going into the subject of fluorides and fluoridation. That is where I have done extensive research on that, and again, that's another thing. Calcium fluoride that forms in the body, it will react with X-rays and will also be a source of free radicals that is connected up to your mercury being electrical. So does calcium fluoride, and this would also cause or could contribute to many health issues. Go ahead.
And also, you know, I'm having a series of lectures in the public, so you can go to the health food stores and see my advertisement there as to where I'm going to be in terms of, or can call me 387-2298 as to where I'm going to be giving free lectures to the public on all types of holistic approaches to wellness. We're also going to have a class. We're going to start up a class in the end of September. It's called the BioLife College. We're offering some courses in holistic healing. If you'd like to join us, we're going to have an open house on the 11th, 15th, and 22nd of September at the Hawaii Technology Institute. So you can call me at 387-2298 as to the free lecture. Okay, and so we're going to be talking about next show. We're going to be discussing functional and cosmetic dentistry, and we're going to even talk about more in depth on fluoride. Okay, so listen up for our look out for our show, because we're going to be going to more information about all these different things you like to hear and never hear from anybody. We're also going in the future shows. We're going to be demonstrating some of the high technology devices that are used to help you with your assessment holistically, and we're also going to be showing how it works and what your treatment strategies can be. So it was nice meeting with you again, and we'll see you on our next show.